The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and are not those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. The phone lines are open. Call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788. That's 220-WSTU. It's time for Stuart Laser Talk with your host, Dr. Tred J. Rosacker.
I'm 5'10" and 242 pounds.
I always say this is the biggest I'm ever going to be, and I said that like 20 pounds ago.
A third of Americans are obese, another third is overweight.
Obesity is the biggest threat to the health, welfare, and future of this country.
I've always been overweight.
I've got diabetes.
Sleep apnea, heart disease.
Everything's hurting now.
It's a lot easier to lose weight than it is to keep weight off.
This is probably going to be the first generation of children who are going to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents.
18% of our children right now are obese.
It's not only health, it's about survival and well-being of the United States as a nation.
You don't crave broccoli, and our generation has grown up craving a Big Mac.
I want to think that there's something better for me.
Unless we're able to control this epidemic, we're going to have an abundance of chronic disease.
All of us have to be part of the solution to reduce obesity.
The weight of the nation is out of control, but we can fix that.
If we don't now take this as a really urgent national priority, we are all going to pay a really serious price.
Obesity will crush the United States in oblivion.
Good morning, Stuart, Florida. Good morning, the world. My name is Dr. Tred Rosacker, and I am your host for the next hour here on the Slim Body Laser Spa's Health and Wellness Show. Today, I am going to get right to it. I am going to go over some thoughts that I have about weight loss and what it takes to change habits and to maintain those habits for the rest of your life. You know, we all have good days and bad days. Right. And I would like to think that the good days are more than the bad days, but without bad days, you can't have good days because you got nothing to compare it against. So, you know, health and wellness and, you know, if you're going to live a long time and if you're going to be healthy without any, you know, health problems as you go through your life, you know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for anybody. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care your genetics, where you live. You know, you're not guaranteed a super long life with health. It's something that has to be earned and has to be, you know, you have to protect yourself. Maybe there was a time when civilization was young and there was not a lot of money to be made on sickness. There wasn't a lot of money to be made on the business model of treating people with sicknesses and diseases. I mean, you're always going to have, people will always need help. Just like in the jungle, the medicine man, you know, the guy who the villagers went to when something happened, a poison befell on them, or you know, they got sick, that they would go to the medicine man, and he had, you know, different things, spiritual prayer, seances, you know, herbs, and different types of things to try to help you to regain your health. I don't think he got paid a lot. They probably traded chickens and food for his work, and he was trusted. And it was quite an amazing situation, because eventually, what I have found is we're all going to need help someday when it comes to wellness and health. You know, it's just not a given that you're not going to someday get sick. But what I want to be very clear about is there's a business model. There's a paradigm, we call it. A paradigm is the way you would look at things, the way what you think is normal, what you think is appropriate, what you will incur into your habits, into your finances, into your time. That paradigm is something that can change. And right now, the paradigm is in treating symptoms instead of getting to the cause of health problems. That's the paradigm we're in right now. That's the medical paradigm. And since medicine controls the doctors and the schools and what they teach, and also, what's acceptable, what once they come out as a doctor, and then they have to learn all about toxicology and drug therapies, and it's all taught by the pharmaceutical and the drug industries. What happens is these doctors come out and they're not really super intelligent about normal function and what it takes to maintain and sustain health, other than the common stuff you might get in a handout. Eat better, sleep more, try to stay away from poisons, exercise. and most people know about that stuff, but they're not really much of a guide anymore as to how to maintain and to get healthy again. And, they're there to treat symptoms, sickness, trauma, broken legs, car accidents, falling out of trees. Thank goodness we have them. I was in an auto accident myself a year and a half ago. Thank you to medicine. They really, really know their stuff when it comes to first aid, crisis care, and many, many other situations of what we call early detection. Medicine is very good at getting you to come in for blood work, for colonoscopies, for EKGs, for body fat analysis, so they can get some biomarkers as to early detection of disease. And that's their model. Their model is to look at people and, start putting them into these early detection type scenarios. And yes, it's a good idea to find out if you have cancer when it first starts. There's no doubt. But my question is, why did the cancer get there in the first place? What went weak? What part of your life did you fail, or was it just chance that you got sick? Was it befalled you from God? Was it a God thing? Or was it really just, putting yourself in situations where you're poisoning and having too many toxins, not exercising to get rid of the poisons, not getting enough sleep, having the stress that comes with stress, all the high blood markers, the problems with the nervous system when you're under chronic stress. And then over time, the person gets weakened, you get sickened, and then disease starts to show. And it's a very slow process, people. It isn't all of a sudden, boom, you got cancer. Trust me. I mean, there are aggressive forms, but for the most part, these situations have been going on for 10, 15, 20, 30 years of development before it started to become something that you're even aware of. In fact, I was reading some articles about an oncologist, a doctor who was an oncologist, who was somebody who specializes in cancer, and he's a surgeon, a thoracic surgeon. And he said that every single day, at least, and this is probably, even a low number, 200 to 300 times per day, your body's immune system is identifying cells, proteins, situations that are abnormal, that are not formed correctly. And your immune system, this innate acquired immune system, which protects you from all the germs and bacteria and viruses known to man, and then the ones we don't know, that's the way we were designed, that immune system defeats it and eats it and gets rid of it every single day. Every single day, your body is finding cells that shouldn't be there. It's sending messages to the immune system to get those macrophages and to increase the white blood cells, to get in there and to eat those little cells before they start to proliferate into something which you might call a tumor or cancer. And there's a reason why children get less cancer than adults, because children and youth, younger people under 30 years old or 34 years old, their systems, their heart, their lungs, their kidneys, their spleen, the amount of exercise they get, the types of food they're eating, their bodies are functioning at a higher level than you when you get older and you stop exercising, you're eating bad foods, you allow body fat to accumulate, you've enjoying your toxins because it seems like it's okay, like my dad who smoked his whole life. And over time, cancer becomes more of a problem because you're older and your body, so what would you want to do? Do you want to wait? And, early detection is important. My God, absolutely. My mom died of colon cancer. There's no doubt. I mean, and as her son, they tell me I have a higher risk of it. Now, I didn't live the life my mother lived. I've lived a very different life. And she didn't know about foods, and she grew up in the Depression where food and bad food was very common. And she really didn't like exercise. It was never something that she was embraced very often. She really didn't take a whole lot of vitamins and supplements and things. And, she never had a colonoscopy, which probably would have prevented or caught this thing early in life if she had had that. I'm her son, so I have had to get a colonoscopy. I needed to make sure, and everything was fine. And that doesn't mean I'm free forever, but it was a good idea because there was a reason for it. There's an indication in my familial tree that I should check that out. My father died of heart disease, or had a major heart attack when he was in his 50s, and I'm already past that. I'm 63. I think he was like 54, and he ended up with a triple bypass. His arteries were completely clogged around his heart at 54, and the arteries that were clogged had grown new vessels around it called collateral vessels to make up the difference for that blockage. So it happened for many, many years. Now, my father is a child of the 40s, the 30s and 40s and 50s. He went to World War II, and, you smoked a lot of cigarettes, and he liked his cigarettes, loved them, but tried to stop many times. And, as his son and a direct, inheritor of his genealogy, I probably have a predisposition to that also, but I did one thing very different. I've never smoked cigarettes. All right. So I was able to take away a huge risk factor, which genetically I must have it. They tell me I do, yet I removed something which changed the game. And that is being intelligent and smart. So what I think is really, really important to know is that there's not a lot of help available from your insurance company, your health insurance, through the providers that get paid by health insurance. That if you feel that the only way you can go to a doctor, and this is done by design, they've made medicine so expensive that you can't access it. You just cannot access it unless you have a plan, unless you're spending an enormous amount of money every year for your healthcare insurance, which will cover you partially, maybe, if you ever to get sick and, need to go to the doctor. What a screwed up system that is. My goodness. How can we want freedom and health and wellness, yet making the ability to go to a provider that you have to have some special card or some special job that allows you to have access to that person? It's a gatekeeper. In fact, and you know what? You're probably not allowed into the gate. I can only speak for myself. I've never believed in health insurance. I haven't had health insurance. I never needed it. Well, I knew that it was my responsibility to stay healthy. Now, I had a crisis plan. I had one that would pay me, with a huge high deductible. I think it was like $10,000, $15,000 deductible. And that health plan was through Mutual of Omaha. And I had it in my 40s and 50s. Yet it was super inexpensive. I don't think it cost me more than $2,000 or $3,000 a year for that crisis care. And I felt good about that because that was what I was more concerned with. I'm not concerned about showing up at the doctor and having to pay for a wellness check or getting some blood work. I was concerned about, a head injury and living, being in a hospital in a vegetative state. I needed that crisis care. Well, you know what? They got rid of those. There is no more crisis care. And you could, 100 days to healthcare, Hillary Clinton, you can thank that administration for destroying your ability to do that because they went managed care and they went PPO. And that was the day, in my opinion, that healthcare changed drastically because of the fact that we lost the major indemnity plans. Now, before that, in the early 90s and 80s, an insurance company had to provide the services. They had to pay for the services that a medical doctor or chiropractor or licensed healthcare physician was in their normal scope of practice. There's their scope of what they're allowed and licensed to do. They couldn't pick and choose what they would pay for and what they wouldn't. If the doctor agreed and you had the plan, they would have to pay for the maximum amount of whatever that plan allows. It usually has a fixed amount. And then what happened is they started coming in with putting in nurses and people to look at the plans and say that it's not medically necessary. That, we looked at your doctor's records and what he's asking, and it's not medically necessary. And you're like, well, but were they a doctor? In chiropractic, they have to be a chiropractor. They passed a law in New York State that said that a medical doctor or a nurse couldn't cut off a provider that they knew nothing about. Okay. And that only lasted a little while until they went managed care. Now, the idea of managed care and PPOs was that by offering just pieces of the healthcare system, certain things that would be like, wellness checks, a certain amount of blood work. If you're having a pregnancy, you're only allowed 3 days in the hospital. If you get an MRI, you're only allowed one every 6 months, or whatever their guide is, that it would be more affordable for businesses to offer these healthcare plans, and thus more people would be insured. That's how it happened. Yet when they came up with their medical plan, the managed care plan, it was as big as a Bible. I mean, it was as big as the World at War and Peace. There was, 1,000 pages of what was covered and what wasn't covered, to the point where you could never navigate it and even predict what would happen. So that is what they sold to the businesses, to the corporations, to the Bank of Americas, to the PNC, to these big companies which insure people, and then it trickled down to all the healthcare providers, the insurance agents that now can group together groups of people and sell them these managed care plans, but they're not complete. They're missing a lot of stuff. And that became very obvious. So if that's the system you're depending on, and you're not doing things to change the trajectory of your health and life, and you're just following the TikTok videos. No, I'm kidding. I have nothing against TikTok. But if you're following what they tell you, you got problems. And you know what? It starts out really easy. It starts out when you're a kid. They indoctrinate you right up front. And the first thing that medicine needs to make sure that you will take their drugs and make sure that you put money into health insurance to make sure that you have this coverage for the rest of your life, is you have to first believe in your heart that you were born defective and missing certain ingredients, that somehow even though you were divinely created, and they tell you that in church, and you come out you come out divinely created, yet in reality, you're missing something. You're missing an enzyme, you're missing something to affect the immune system, that you need and have to have an intervention from outside of the body into the system for you to have even a chance at living. Okay. And it begins with vaccinations. Okay. I mean, wow, have we come a long way with vaccinations? 5 years ago, before COVID, if you asked parents and people that are fairly, aware, would you have vaccinations? You would say childhood vaccinations are fine, right? The DPT, the MMR, all these different things they give a child when they're younger. And when I remember, there used to be like 14 different shots when I got out of college and I started looking at the vaccination schedules. Today, there's 72 separate injections that you have to have. From 0 to 15 years old, go to the CDC's website, put in childhood immunization schedule 2024 from 0 to 15 years old. And you'll have a printout will come out that will be 3 pages long. Yet, when you look at people now as a result of the COVID and this horrible rollout and all these, these things we're finding out about the COVID vaccination, I would tell you that 60% to 70 to 80% of the people surveyed say they wouldn't take vaccinations anymore. They definitely won't take the COVID, but they're even saying, I'm not going to vaccinate my kids. That never happened before COVID. So there's a change happening. They're starting to realize that maybe just following one idea, one paradigm, living in one bubble might not be the safest place to be, right? It might not be really out for their benefit as much as it is for the benefit of the people that own the bubble. So in my chiropractic office, because I am a doctor of chiropractic, I used to have a sign, because what I found was happening after the insurance, the big indemnity plans went away. I had like 4 years of practicing, and when you actually got paid for what you did, and then they went into the managed care and everything started becoming, metered out, and you had to prove every adjustment you did, and you had to fill out, outcome assessments as to where you think they're going to go. They put limits on all the policies. I realized that insurance is actually a problem, because if you think that your insurance is, you only want to go what insurance pays, it might not be the best idea. So I used to have a sign in my office. It was a big sign. It said, just because your insurance pays for it doesn't mean it's a good idea. All right? Just because your insurance pays for it does not mean it's a good idea. And, I know I'm preaching to the choir out there with a lot of you, but there's a lot of you out there that wouldn't do any service if it wasn't covered by insurance. And rightly so. Your insurance costs a lot of money. My latest policy, which was forced upon us by the Obamacare for those several years until Trump turned it around and didn't make it mandatory, I had to get health insurance or be fined. So I got one of the plans, which had a high deductible, and I got in, I put my wife under it. And you know how much it cost me? It cost me $10,000, $10,800 per year just for me. $10,000. And I never used the healthcare. And when you went in, it had like a $10,000 deductible. Most stuff wasn't paid. I dropped out as soon as Trump got into office, and he got rid of that requirement. Not that I believe in Trump, but I don't believe in being forced to do something to, it was insane. So it's something that you really got to look at. And here's, I could go on and tell you the problems with it. The other thing I'm seeing happening with healthcare right now is that it is becoming a business. You know, it's something that when you find a health provider, a doctor who went to college and has a license and has passed all of their board certificates, and you know that they're legitimate people, and you have a relationship with that doctor, maybe they're treating you for AIDS. Maybe they're treating you for venereal disease. Maybe it's a bad back or a heart problem. That relationship between you and your doctor is sacred. It cannot be penetrated by any other legal entity, just like the lawyer-client privilege. When a client and a lawyer form an arrangement, you know, a contract, that lawyer's what's said and what's done is no one can crack that veil unless there's criminal activity going on or some reason why. It's very sacred. And the between a doctor and the patient is just as sacred and just as well protected as that. But here's the problem. When you allow a third party, another entity, an insurance company, a government funded plan, Medicare, Medicaid, any of these outside interests, that third party has a right to know what your doctor is saying. They have a right to know what your diagnosis is, what your problems are. Why? Because they're paying the bill. And you give up your freedom of privacy, of choice, of getting the best treatment for you based on what your doctor thinks is the most important. Because now the third party that's paying the doctor's fee is also paying for the drugs that they're going to recommend and the treatments and how long you're going to be allowed to be in a rehab. And it's cost cutting at what expense? This is factual. This is not something that's a conspiracy theory. Trust me, you know? So what do people do? They show up at the hospital without any insurance. You're almost better off going into the ER without any insurance at all in America because they won't throw you out until you're stable, right? They have to see you. I'm not suggesting that, everybody. Please, Martin Memorial or whatever you call it now, Cleveland Clinic. It's a business model. So what's happened is medicine has become now the third party of, you know, the government has jumped in as a third party between you and the doctor because of the hospitals and the pharmaceuticals and all the money. And you know, it's just a huge business. And we're suffering. And we are suffering greatly. I mean, our life expectancy in America is like 148th in the world. We spend more money on healthcare than like the 4 biggest nations in the country, in the world, spend on their healthcare. We spend more than that than all of them added together. Can you believe that? Yet we're like, you have a better chance of living longer if you lived in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. They had less disease, less chronic problems than we did, and they were being burned with napalm. We're walking around suffering miserably with comfort. Think about that. I'm 63 years old. I've been around the planet a few times, been around the earth, 63 times. But let me tell you, the truth is that I remember being a young man and going to see my friends, and there would always be, in Long Island, Massapequa, for those of you from Long Island, there'd always be like one of your friends who had an aunt or an uncle or a parent that was bedridden, laid up. I mean, they didn't come out of the house. They were sick, and the family took care of them. You rarely see that anymore because modern medicine is what they're doing is they're able to fix the arthritic knee with a new knee replacement. Or instead of them gasping for air from emphysema and lung disease, they now can put them with a portable oxygen system that allows them to travel in the car, and you see them coming by with a cannula in their nose. That didn't happen 25 years ago. They were bedridden. Their balance, their ability, the bowels that will release when you don't want it to from chronic irritable bowel syndrome. They have drugs now for that. They have freaking Pampers for that. These people used to be in your house. They didn't leave your home because they couldn't. Now we're walking around, we're driving, we are living better. Maybe I just say we're suffering comfortably because nobody's really getting to the cause and the source as to why are we so sick. And that's my message here today. I am going to point out something. If you've toughed it out and listened to this, we got 20 minutes left. I have found a few things that are number one most important things in your life that you have to look at. If you want to live better, if you want to live longer, if you don't want to be a burden to your family and those who love you, because that's what happens when you get sick. You become a burden. And in America, we push you off into an assisted living center, which is going to bankrupt your family for the rest of their life because the costs are so high. And then if you can't afford that, you're in a nursing home, which is, I don't even think that Medicare or Medicaid pays for nursing homes unless you're completely, despondent and, you're at a poverty level of under $7,000 or something. You don't even qualify for it. So what happens when you get sick is you start dumping all your assets so you can get into the nursing home because you're sick. Why is this happening? Why aren't we living life like a candle? Think of a candle. You have a nice, beautiful candle and you light it with a match and it burns the same flame all the way down to the bottom. It doesn't get dim. It doesn't start to wean down. It just goes out. Why don't we live our lives like that? How come our lives, as we're getting older and older, gets weaker and the light is getting less and less? Why is that? I tell you something, it's not okay. It's common. It seems to be normal, but that's the paradigm. That's the big lie. That you are born deficient of certain enzymes and certain things. And if you don't have help from the medical system that's constantly drugging you and giving you more poisons, and managing these ups and downs, over time, you're not really making any changes because, gosh darn it, that's what drugs do. They tell you they get rid of the symptom. And let me tell you, symptoms motivate people to make a change. That's the truth about drugs. And since medicine's whole basis is drug therapy paid for by insurance companies, allowable through the hospital systems, and then trained doctors through the medical colleges and the medical institutions, that this is what all they're really taught for the most part, unless you go outside of the system. And there are doctors outside of the system. Please don't get me wrong. You're in big trouble because that's our paradigm. And I'm going to smash that paradigm today. Okay? Your body's ability to heal and to repair itself and to live properly is far greater than anyone has ever allowed you to believe. Medicine's paradigm, this idea of killing germs to make you healthy, once it's pushed under the truth of light of truth, it will die and fail because it can't take the truth. It's exposing the truth, and medicine has to require not telling you things by censoring and closing off discussion and not allowing the doctor to practice medicine, the private practitioner out there, your dads, your family, the people that you know, if it isn't part of their medical model of sickness, symptomatic treatment with drugs, then it doesn't exist. They're gonna just destroy you. We see it happening every day. I don't know. I'm not here to. I just think it's been an incredible thing to watch what happened with COVID, that how they can make a decision to clamp down on businesses, on your ability to move freely. That, I mean, you think back, please don't forget what happened. I mean, they had people in schools where they put plastic bubbles around them, and then they didn't let anybody go to school for 2 years. They took children, my nephews, and told them, oh, if you go into school, you're going to spread COVID. We know today that was not true. And that Zoom would be okay. That Zoom is fine. Well, they found out that Zoom didn't work very well. In fact, most people didn't even look at it. That's why we have this generation right now. Now they're in their, they're now in their college, they're graduating colleges or getting their jobs, and they didn't even have a high school, like a sophomore prom. They didn't have anything. They couldn't say goodbye to their friends as they split up from school. And if that isn't a wake-up call, that you need to look at your life and say to yourself, what am I going to do today to prevent that? How can I fortify, strengthen, and make my body as strong as possible so I don't need this false bill of goods? Because remember, you get sick and you don't know why you got sick, you're going to go in there and you're going to show up at that place. There's just no doubt about it. I was there. I lost part of my foot as a result of it. I was in an auto accident, a little different. So it was something that I just can't tell you how important it is. At the Slim Body Laser Spa, I know I call it a spa. It's not it. It's a major health restoration, detoxification. Let's find a solution for your inflammatory response. Let's find a solution for your type 2 diabetes. Why did this chronic condition happen? Why is your body not producing enough insulin, or why is it becoming insulin, which leads to kidney damage, nerve damage, kidney disease? Why is this happening to you? It's happening to me. How about hypertension and high blood pressure? How many of you out there are on blood pressure medication? Half of you will put up your hand if you're over 60. I know you are, because I do these reports. High blood pressure occurs when the force of the blood against the artery walls is too high. Obesity and sedentary lifestyle contribute to hypertension by increasing blood volume and arterial stiffness. The stiffness of your arteries is what creates high blood pressure. When you have arteries which are elastic, like you do when you're younger, like a balloon, they open and close, they stretch and move, and that helps move the blood through the body. It's kind of like, this is important. Why do we get hypertension and high blood pressure? Well, here's one of the number one reasons. Arterial stiffness. Your arteries, which make up the blood vessels, which come from your heart, your aorta, and go down into all the different, down the descending abdominal aorta, into the legs, down into the femoral arteries. Those arteries are stretchy, like a balloon. Not that stretchy, but this is just an example. So if you were to take air and blow up a balloon and it was to stretch, when you let go of that end of that balloon, the air is forced out by the elasticity of the balloon. But what if I took a Ziploc baggie that had no elasticity at all, a gallon Ziploc baggie, and I filled it with air or water and then just set it down? Would there be any mechanism that squirts the water out besides gravity leaking it all over the floor? No, there's no elasticity in a Ziploc baggie to help move it. So your blood, which goes through your system, is moved by the elasticity of the arteries, because when the artery gets, the blood pumps into the artery gets larger and the elasticity moves it on down the way. When you lose that elasticity from plaquing of the arteries, your heart now has to take all of the burden of moving blood from the heart through the body and then back again. It's pumping without the help of elasticity of the arteries. And this is what leads to heart failure. It's what killed my father. That's important to know. Over time, untreated high blood pressure damages the arteries, the heart, the brain, the kidneys, and the eyes, leading to serious health problems such as heart attacks, strokes, and kidney disease. Most high blood pressure can be helped just through dietary changes and losing body fat, by the way. How about cardiovascular disease? Does that concern you? It should. 1 out of every 2 of us are going to die from cardiovascular disease. I'm sorry. 1 out of 2. Cancer is 1 out of 3. So your odds are terrible. So what is cardiovascular disease? This term refers to conditions that involve narrow or blocked blood vessels. So the plaquing narrows the vessel and they get blocked. This leads to heart attacks, chest pain, and strokes. Obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and lack of exercise are major risk factors for cardiovascular disease. The accumulation of plaque in the arteries restricts blood flow to vital organs, increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. There it is, people. It's right there. I've just given you what you can do to turn around and reverse cardiovascular disease if you're interested. One thing is getting rid of obesity. Got to get rid of the fat, baby. Bringing the high, and as a result of losing the obesity, the extra body fat, your cholesterol will be better, but you still have to eat foods that don't increase cholesterol. And then lack of exercise, you got to move. These are major risk factors. Yet, you still believe that super expensive health plan that your employer is taking money for is going to help you if you get sick. And it is not, man. You're going to go in there and they're going to look at you and they're going to give you drugs and they'll give you something and you will go home suffering comfortably, but they haven't cured anything. I'll be nice. Stroke. My mom had a mini stroke as she started to get into her, when she had the colon cancer and then she had the procedure at the hospital to resect the bowel and to fix that. She ended up with a small stroke at the food place, getting food for my nephew at Pantera's or whatever that place is. And it happened, man. And it was terrible. Thank God it was a very minor one. It didn't leave her with any deficit, but she had an hour where she didn't know why she was there. Stroke occurs when the blood flow to the brain is interrupted either by a blockage, clot, or just over time, or bleeding, meaning a hemorrhagic stroke, which is a weak blood vessel. By the way, taking long-term medications for blood pressure and for cholesterol and for these things actually lead to a weakening of your arterial walls and can be indicative and causative as to why we have these bleeds. High blood pressure, diabetes, all related to obesity. Obesity. I know I keep mentioning obesity, and I'll go over it exactly why in the last 5 minutes here, why obesity is something that you can treat. You can get rid of obesity. You're not going to get rid of heart disease. You're not going to get rid of cancer, or if you had if you already had a stroke. All right, but you can change your body fat percentage. My God. But nobody wants to. Anyway, a lot of people do. I'm only kidding when I say that. So coronary artery disease. Number 5 risk with obesity. Cardio-arterial disease develops when plaque builds up inside the coronary arteries, which supply oxygen-rich blood to the heart muscle. Obesity, oh, there it is again, that darn obesity. I don't want to see, I'm not changing. I like my sweets. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, and smoking contribute to the development of coronary heart disease. I think we figured out that smoking is not a good idea, but we still haven't figured out that obesity is not a good idea. It can block blood flow to the heart, leading to chest pain, heart attacks, and heart failure. Well, here's another one that's very much related to obesity and alcohol. Heavy amounts of alcohol. It's called fatty liver disease. So fatty livers occur when your diet is terrible and you're eating too many empty carbohydrates, which is basically sugar and processed foods. And over time, your body fat is getting larger and you're accumulating more and more body fat within the blood system, within the blood supply. Your triglycerides are high, your cholesterol is high, and it's going on for several years to maybe even decades of eating these types of foods. What happens is those fatty particles accumulate and collect within your liver, within your pancreas, and within your organs. So you get what we call visceral fat from eating these standard American diet, what you get at the racetrack. I put some pictures up on the racetrack, the food, what is it? The gas station, but now it's a food place. It's just I mean, they got 80 to 90% of everything in there is sugar and alcohol and energy drinks. I took pictures of them. You see them on my Facebook page. You know, this is leading to fatty liver disease. And you know what? Obesity and losing body fat more than just taking Ozempic, which is, I do not recommend that. If you want to know why, you'll have to come and talk to me personally. I know it can help people. There's tons of you out there taking it, but you know, Fen-Phen was something that helped people too. And they took that one off the market also. I think we're going to find that these semaglutides are physiologically incompatible with really overall life. And if you don't have a plan of what to do when you run out of the money because it's so expensive, or you realize you can't keep taking it, you better have a plan. And you know, Slim Body, I have a plan for that. So, but non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is something that I suffered from, and I managed to reverse it through fasting, through intermittent and then whole day fasting. Took me 4 months to do it, but I was determined to do it because I don't want to show up at the hospital again. It's a horrible place. It's scary. It's dirty. There's people there that don't speak English anymore. I mean, for the most part, I mean, they try to, but and I shouldn't say that. That was nice. There's a lot of really wonderful people at the hospital that do come from other countries, and they do help a lot of people. But it's just still someplace I just don't want to be at. So I fasted to get rid of my fatty liver disease, and I managed to get off of all of my medications legitimately. I was only on 2. I was on metformin and I was on glipizide, and they wanted to start putting me on insulin because there was the only way I could lower my blood sugar was to start supplementing with insulin. And then I read about all I'm really doing is raising my insulin levels to treat the blood sugar, which is the blood sugar is not the problem. It's the insulin. So when I realized I had to eat less to reverse the insulin, to lessen the insulin by eating foods that don't make insulin, such as proteins and good fats, very low, carbohydrates that have fiber, that lowers insulin. And I was able to, I swear to goodness, in a week, I was off of any of my meds. My blood sugar was responding normally as long as I didn't eat foods that raise insulin. And you can Google that. Google foods that do not raise insulin that a human can eat, and you'll see what the foods are. If you got insulin problems and you got diabetes and you got neuropathy and you got metabolic syndrome, I promise you're eating too many carbohydrates. So, but you need to look at it yourself and figure it out. There's a whole bunch of other things: sleep apnea, osteoarthritis, polycystic ovary syndrome is a hormonal disorder that affects women of reproductive age. Obesity and insulin resistance are common features. They contribute to hormone imbalances, irregular menstrual cycles, PCOS. All right. I think I've made my point. Listen, we are having a summer of love at the Slim Body Laser Spa. The summer of love is that we are trying to help our community actually feed themselves. That's how desperate many of you out there have become, is the prices have gone up so drastically, yet your income has not. What is somebody to do? Well, food is like, 101. You got to have food. And there's a group that have been helping people right in our area called the Jensen Beach Christian Church. It's right there next to the new bar. What is it? The Lures Bar, where all the people are drinking and partying. It's right behind that. But the Jensen Beach Christian Church has been there. I don't know. It looks like it's one of the oldest buildings in Jensen Beach. But listen, I'm at I was driving back. I live on Indian River Drive. I'm driving back, and like Indian River Drive is clogged with cars. There's got to be 20, 30 cars lined up. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And I look in, and they got people in orange vests. And what they're doing is they got a food drive. They got a food line there for people that can come up, pull up, no questions asked. You do have to sign up when you get there, so you get a little ticket so you're not ripping them off. And then you get in that line, and when you pull up there, they give you a carton of fresh produce and food for no charge. Now, when I looked at it, there was BMWs, there was, there's a lot of people in trouble, and they're serving, got to be 100, 200, 300 people every single Saturday. So I'm having a food drive, melt away stubborn fat in exchange for a canned food drive. You can donate the food at my office. I'm at 2311 Southeast Ocean Boulevard, right across from the Fresh Market, next to Carmela's Pizza. And in exchange for that 5 cans of food, I will give you a free body fat analysis. I'll give you a nutritional consultation and a laser lipo session, which is a $300 value in exchange for the 5 cans of food. Now, not everybody's going to qualify for the laser. You have to have the right health, but come in, donate the food. We're going to be doing this through the summer. So please help us to help feed people. Again, it's Dr. Rissacker, Dr. Tread Rissacker, 772-223-5885. Dr. Dred's Slim Body Laser Spa, East Ocean Boulevard, right across from the Fresh Market. It's a canned food drive. See you soon. See you next week. Thank you.